Hey guys, welcome back to the Another Excuse podcast. I'm your host, Byron Greeley, and today's guest is Libby Swan. Libby is the co-founder of Axioned. She founded the company 16 years ago, and Axioned specializes in designing and building exceptional digital user experiences and tech products. We chat about all things Axioned to start and how they have a team of about 50 people stationed in India, UK, and the US. And then the conversation develops into chatting about manifestation and how important it is to set aside the time to manifest your dream life. And we also chat about being human and how important it is in this AI tech era. It's a really interesting conversation. I enjoyed this one, and I'm sure you will too. Enjoy the show. Hi, Libby. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. To kick us off, could you tell me a bit about Axioned and what you guys do?
Sure. One, thanks for pronouncing our name correctly. It's actioned with an X. We like to action things, technology projects primarily. So we're a team of technologists. And we like to service either what we call innovators, so people who are looking to break new ground and build new applications under platforms in a POC MVP-like model, or we come in and help existing innovators scale. And we also love to help high growth businesses that are really dependent on their website and MarTech stack in terms of maintaining that technology and ensuring that it's supporting their growth trajectory. So those are our two types of clients. And like I said, all supported by technologists. So developers, testers, project managers, and UX UI designers.
Great. And what gave you the idea to start a company like Axioned?
I didn't come up with the original idea. I joined my co-founder. So he came up with the original idea. And his original idea was, so this is like 16 years ago. He saw technology service providers and only really understanding the technology and not necessarily the UX UI and the user experience and the design and really the user experience. And so he wanted to bridge that gap and create a services firm that understood both.
Right. And you mentioned that the company started 16 years ago.
Yeah.
What are the main reasons as to why you've kept working on the same business for so long?
Wired differently? I think so. It's the company is owned by myself and my husband. I'd say we're just both wired differently. Like we're not easily influenced by get rich quick schemes. We didn't necessarily want to give power over to someone else. We wanted to establish something that would enable us to live life in a way that worked for us and our value systems. And so, yeah, I think that's why we are continuing to go at it, and I could keep doing it for the rest of my life. And one of the reasons I say that also is I've met a lot of people in the last few years, and I get a lot of advice and speak to a lot of people who have run businesses and maybe sold it and what have you. Selling doesn't necessarily lead to happiness or contentment. And it sometimes leads to a seeking for something else and a seeking for something else that isn't as fulfilling. And so in many ways, I've actually it's made me appreciate what I have more and more and want to continue this journey as long as I possibly can. That's me today. That's January. It's 2025. If you ask me this time next year, who knows, I might have a different perspective.
That's really interesting. And would you say you're still on the way to creating your ideal life, or would you say you're at a stage where you are kind of there?
I hesitate to say I'm at a stage that I'm kind of there because I worry what that might bring up. But yeah, like we're quite content with life. I want to make sure that everyone in our business I would love for everyone else. I think that part of my hesitation is I'm not sure if everyone else on my team can say the same. Um, and I would like for that to also exist.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how big is the company today?
I think we're operating around 50 people, I think, right now. We did go through some layoffs last year, at the start of last year. So we did reduce in size. We increased in size during the pandemic. There was a bit of a downturn last year, and we did decrease in size, and we became smaller and nimbler last year. Yeah.
And uh, if I'm correct in saying that you have teams in multiple locations around the world, is that correct?
Yeah, well, our primary team is in Mumbai. I'm speaking to you from Mumbai right now. And we do have folks that we work with in the US and the UK also. Uh, and our clients are in the UK and the US. So, but the majority of our team is in Mumbai, and I split my time between Mumbai, Northeast USA, in Connecticut, just outside of New York, and the UK. So, yeah.
Wow. And if you could take us back to sort of the beginning of when you started scaling your company, what was the hardest part about scaling or growing your company, particularly across 3 different time zones?
I was younger, so it didn't see like I guess it was hard, but I was just willing to work. I think the hardest part is just managing one's stress and emotional regulation. Um, and because that impacts everything. That's like the foundation for how you interact with your team or how you deal with challenges and problems and opportunities. But otherwise, I think looking back, I had the energy to just go at it all, like all hours of the day. So, yeah. And then obviously in doing it with a spouse adds the other layer of challenge. But that can be a very educational journey also if that's something that you want to pursue. So, yeah.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask about that. What is it like building a business with your spouse? Would you say it's a very different experience to a normal co-founder?
I'd say I think it's I think it's only worth entertaining if you're someone who is so curious about life that you want to learn about all aspects of life, like all aspects of humanity. Like I wrote myself a bit of a what did I want to achieve in life 9 points when I was like 29. And one of them is I just wanted to understand the human experience. So I feel like I have chosen things in life that help me understand the human experience. And one of those is working with your spouse.
Yeah, I find that fascinating. Because the the entrepreneurs that work with their spouse or start businesses with their spouse seem to do it really well. But I also suppose that's like a survivorship bias, where you don't see the ones that didn't
Yeah.
work out.
Yeah. 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 So and that's in general, right? There's a
Yeah,
survivorship bias about everything in general. You only see kind of the stories that people want to see. So, yeah,
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 true.
yeah.
And when building out your teams across the different locations, did does company culture play a role in that? Is it difficult to embed a company culture when there's national cultures that are very diverse and different at play too?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like I think our culture is driven by the culture that we've established for our team in India, in Mumbai. Um, and so my husband is Indian, and and together and with the team, we've established a culture that works well for the team in India. And then, so when we look for folks to work with in the UK and the US, we're looking for folks who have experience in working with international teams and therefore understand that there are different ways to view the world and judge the world. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Have you run into any difficulties with that, or is that just like a prerequisite when hiring, that you ensure that? Well, I'm sure you figured it out along the way, and now you hire
No,
specifically for
we've
those
we,
people.
we, we've run into difficulties, like in the sense that we might have hired someone that we thought would be able to manage that, but just didn't have on paper enough experience, enough background in working with folks just with it's more of folks with diverse backgrounds. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say it's based on where in the world someone is. Like, you could be in the States and be having a diverse team. It's just really homogeneous or heterogeneous cultures, right? Like, can you work with different types of people? Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I feel like I have to ask about AI and the role or impact it's having on a business like yours. Is it improving your output and speed of output and things like that?
Yes. I don't have the hands-on experience myself, to say, like,
Mhm.
working with these tools myself, but I have seen it. Like, we built an app last year for the App Store. We were given 6 weeks to build a community platform. We did it with the help of AI tools. Now, AI tools, you don't just plug them in and anyone can use them. It requires experience and oversight to be able to judge the results that you get back, et cetera, et cetera. But yes, these tools are helping, and I have high expectations of how they'll continue to help us all. But it's just a matter of, right hammer for the job, so to speak, or right tool for the job. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And obviously it increases output, but in the back of your mind, does it pose a question of like, could our team be even leaner and still have the same output or even better output? Or is it like we keep this team and we expand and grow as a business by increasing our output? What?
It's I'd love to be able to. Sorry, I have a doorbell situation happening in my background.
No,
Someone
no.
hopefully you can edit that out.
Yeah,
Um
I couldn't hear it.
okay, but I keep getting distracted by it. I obviously I would love to be able to do all of the above. I would love to be able to do more with the team that we have. Um I, I one of my passions, or one of what makes my job very meaningful, is employing people, is in retaining people, is being able to increase their salaries. That's obviously dependent on, you know, keeping clients, winning clients, and growing the business. So, okay, you add AI to that. That actually drives me to actually do more from a sales and marketing perspective than a necessarily wanting to get leaner perspective. It does change things in terms of who do we want on our team, and what kind of people we want in the future. Because I think in to use these tools, like I said, there needs to be experience and there needs to be a level of judgment. That's harder to do if you don't have any experience, right? So, like we saw, what's changed so far for us is how many trainees we bring in, or juniors that we bring in and bring up. So we're still working all that out, and I'm not sure exactly what it's going to look like, even at the end of this year, in terms of what our team's going to look like at the end of this year. But those are conversations that we're having right now.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. And um, in our previous discussion, I know you said that starting a business is a privilege. Could you speak to that a bit, please?
Oh, yeah. Well, I quit I was working in the US for about 9 years, and then I quit my job at 29, and I quit with privilege, like knowing that I could quit, and there was like a safety net, right? Like I felt like I had enough confidence in my skills that I'd figure it out. I felt like my family supported me in doing that. I didn't have any other responsibility. Like I didn't have a spouse or children or anything to be responsible to. So not having like any family obligations so much, and then also just having the confidence and also the support of my family is a privilege. Like not a lot of people, and then being able to then go from there and pursue an entrepreneurial journey is a privilege. So does that does that answer your question? I'm not sure if that's how I answered the
Yeah.
question last time, but yeah.
Yeah, it does make sense.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because entrepreneurs are also made in a different way too, where they're sort of backed into a corner
Mm.
and they're forced. So they may not have many resources, but they're forced to make decisions or take action or take more risk because they have nothing to lose in the other direction.
Yeah.
So I find it fascinating having conversations with
Well,
you,
I, c- I, c-
people like you.
I could look at it through that perspective as well. Like at that age, I also landed up in India,
Mhm.
and then I had the option to join, I guess, my husband and co-founder in scaling the business, or had the option to do something else. But actually, doing something else here and being valued for doing something else, it wasn't necessarily going to work out. So it
Yeah.
was either we move, like we don't could like we shut down the business and follow me and my career somewhere else in the world, or you get into this. So like there's a bit of both, right? Like you could put a light on it through multiple lenses and tell a different story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
True. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
And would you say you've developed or changed as a leader over the years?
I'd like to say yes. I don't know if I'm the right person to judge. um, I think I've become a lot more vulnerable. Like having conversations like this is far more easier. I think that just comes with age, also. Age and just school of hard knocks. um, and I think age and the school of hard knocks does make someone a little softer around the edges, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, and then I think softer around the edges can mean better display of what one might call leadership skills, I guess. So yeah.
And
I,
would you say
mm.
oh, sorry, go for it.
No, the one thing I find interesting though is I often I'll be surrounded by people commenting on other leaders, either political leaders or business leaders that we see in like the modern landscape, and I'll be like, oh, I'm not like that. I'm not like that. But one thing, I had a coach last year who just helped me become more comfortable and confident in the fact that I'm me, and it's
Mhm.
okay that I'm not like other people, irrespective of how good or bad other people are, right? So I think, this term, what is a good leader, it's tricky territory.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And in terms of your vulnerability in connection to leadership, would you say that you notice a difference in the people you're managing or leading when you are more vulnerable?
That's a really good question. Um, I don't know. I don't yeah, I don't know. I think being vulnerable then brings often sometimes a lightness to the situation, and I think people appreciate in a work environment someone bringing lightness to the situation, um, as opposed to always being hard and fast. I'm not saying I'm not hard and fast. I'm hard and fast as well. Um, but yeah, yeah, that's a tough question. I don't feel I answered that very well.
That's no problem. It's just a conversation. And if you had to give advice to someone who wants to be an entrepreneur, what would you tell them?
Learn how to get vulnerable fast. Sorry, we're still sticking to the word vulnerable. Enlist help and don't be so egotistical that you don't listen to others, but then also don't be so self-judgmental that you don't listen to your own voice, and take action and iterate. And if you're not acting on something and you're pausing because you're stuck and you're confused between all the voices, your own and everyone else's, just take action and iterate in a financially responsible manner. Do things financially responsibly. Also, like, the world has limited resources.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't seem like the world has limited financial resources, but yeah.
Yeah, that's great advice. I'm curious about the one point that you mentioned, get or find help. How has help manifested throughout your career, and how did you go about looking for that help?
I got to a point where I just started asking, and then people put you in touch with people, or you meet people and they're like, "Oh, I think you would enjoy a conversation with this person." And then I formally signed up for coaching, but only last year. In many ways, in retrospect, I wish I did it earlier. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
but
I I think people are very surprised by how open and willing people are to help when you just ask. Um, Everyone just assumes that they're being a burden, or that person won't be interested or willing to help. But it's actually surprising how many people are willing to connect you to someone or offer a helping hand in any way they can.
yeah, the one thing I'd also I then just went down a path of like asking people for all this advice, right?
Yeah.
And one thing I have also discovered in asking for people advice and help, a lot of people look back in retrospect, like in many ways we might be doing now. Like, people make stories in retrospect that fit, but it's not
Yeah.
linear. Like, life is not linear. Like, even the story I'm telling you right now, like, you could look at it through multiple different lenses, but this is my perspective looking back, and it sounds and seems linear. It feels like it fits, et cetera, et cetera. And like, the one thing I discovered is like, and there's just a lot of luck involved in the journey. And there's a lot of nuances that might not even come out in the stories that you hear or the advice that you get. Um, yeah, I discovered that in asking for advice and the retrospective stories. Everything sounds like if you do this, you get that, and then you get this, and then you get that, and it doesn't work like that necessarily. So
Yeah. Yeah, true.
everyone's always looking for a holy grail. Why not? The world could capitalism depends on it, so
Yeah.
it sells well.
Definitely. Um, but you mentioned luck there, and I feel like an element to luck is sort of making your own luck. So the more you ask for help, or the more you go out there and put your ideas out there,
Yeah,
luck kind of finds you.
agree with that.
It's not just you're a lucky person
Yeah,
and you're sitting on your ass not doing anything, and then
yeah.
just luck falls out of the sky.
I do believe in the power of I don't really like the word manifesting because it sounds all woo-woo, but I really do believe in the power of like honing in on what it is you want and getting really crystal clear and writing it down and revisiting it and reflecting on it and revising it. I'm still not great at that, and it's something that I want to get better at. I feel like there's a part of me that sometimes doesn't spend time on it because I'm fearful that I might actually manifest something pretty like more awesome than I want. Um, but I have found that process, like you said, like I have found that combined with luck tends to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It's
feel like though I just gave a holy grail scenario. Maybe that
no,
might not work for someone.
but it's true because, yeah, everyone thinks the term manifestation is kind of like a woo-woo concept,
Mm,
but it's basically just focusing with intention on specific things. And
yeah.
if you want a specific goal, you're going to eventually start taking steps towards that. If
Yeah.
that's all you're focusing on, if you're
Yes.
writing it down every day,
Yes.
you're going to start making those things happen. And
Yeah.
so it kind of drives you to action.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's not like you sitting there imagining it and you're not
Yeah.
doing anything about it.
Yeah.
I,
Like
I, I'm a firm believer too.
Yeah, like last year, the framework I used last year, and I've used different frameworks over the years because I was just reminded of it. Like I actually suggested a framework just recently that we use as a team, and then a team member reminded me, "Oh, you suggested this framework," and I'm like, "Oh, we did, and I did that." I can't remember, but last year I used Mel Robbins' framework more from a personal perspective, and then this year I decided to try and adapt it to business. And like, so going forward, I want to try and have both a personal and professional one that's a little bit more lined up. I've also done the like, that this will sound weird, but I've also done the Deepak Chopra, like 30 days, but, and I found interest, like, that worked. Like, in many ways, if I look back at everything I documented, I kind of got and or am the path. But what I find interesting is, as you start to do that, you will find certain things do manifest yourself. So manifest, and like if you pay too much attention to manifesting one part of your life, and then you're like, oh, and so now, like as I look forward to 2025, I want to bring some things up and balance certain things out because I feel like I might have focused too much, and yeah, so that's an interesting process. So yeah,
Yeah, it is.
yeah,
It's just a continuous process of just balancing everything out.
yeah,
But there are periods and chapters where you've got to sort of focus on the one to make it work
yeah,
before you focus on the others.
yeah.
And one thing I really struggle with is devoting the time to these sort of exercises and practices sometimes.
Christmas
Like,
and New Year's.
Christmas and New Year's.
It's great
Um,
reflection time. Yeah.
yeah. So you don't have a constant process like throughout the year. It's more just those.
It's funny, like, a great question. Like, so Christmas and New Year's, I tend to always reflect at the end of the like the Western Gregorian calendar year and look ahead, right? So it's just natural for me. So I tend to do it then. What I did do last year, because actually the Mel Robbins like thing prompts you to, is like, what systems and tools are you going to use to remind yourself to do these things? And I landed on last year just using my Apple to do app. And so then I'd set up every 3 months to review what I had intended. Did I do that? Not every 3 months, no. Maybe like two out of, like, I probably did it twice, just a quick review of like opening up what I wrote down to check. And but what I did find is that because I use these various tools. Like I'm using Trello for myself professionally. I'm using Apple To Do's like personally, because I set up tools. I did find that worked a little bit better last year, just in 2024, in terms of making sure that I was doing the things that I wanted to make happen. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And speaking of tools, I've actually started using ChatGPT in a more intentional way
Hmm.
by asking it to ask me questions to achieve a particular outcome. Like for this, it's like if you want to sit down and set intentions and set out a plan to sort of manifest
Yeah.
for 2025, and I like it to ask me questions one by one because I get a bit daunted if I've got 25 questions to
Yeah.
to answer
But
at one go.
that's, now I understand what you're saying, like finding the time, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's finding the time between doing that and then doing the things that need to get done to get those results, right? So but it's a fine balance. Yeah. Like I've written to myself, like, one thing I need to do is I need to do some work on our sales and marketing vision and strategy. And one thing I said to myself in terms of like being able to find the next action that I need to take. I mean, I've already identified some actions, but like some more, I feel harder hitting actions, is I want to do that process morning pages. And I've said to myself,
Yes.
oh, I want to do morning pages with ChatGPT. But I haven't found the time yet to do that. Probably because I haven't put it on my Apple to-do list on my Trello board.
But see, morning pages is an interesting one because I see it as just a mental mind dump.
Mm.
And so I feel like ChatGPT might take away from that process. But yeah, let me know if
Yeah, I
you
haven't done
figure
it
out a
yet.
way to work.
My
Yeah.
vision is like I do a bit of a mental dump, then plug it into ChatGPT, and then say, ChatGPT, what questions do you have for me about this mental brain dump? And that's just, yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking then iterating from there. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah, I do a 5-minute like bullet journal thing in the morning.
Mhm.
But it's all handwritten. But plugging it into ChatGPT and getting it to ask questions and sort of follow up and see if the 3 priorities for my day are, if they're like the same priorities 2 months later. It's sort of asking questions as to why that they're still the same priority and I haven't got them done, and
I'm
sort of like accountability partner.
I'm impressed you do the 5 bullet in the morning. That's great. I did set as one of my intentions last year is to do morning pages and do this like morning. I'm still to this day, like I do it. I probably did it max 12 times last year. I haven't been able to make a habit out of it. But what I do tend to, yeah, I do believe in the power of getting things out of your head and in writing and letting it go.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
But the hardest part is picking up the habit. And that's why I tried to like habit stack. So if I have a consistent morning routine, it's like I do these 3 things and then go to gym or something, and then I'm able to be in the flow because I've allocated that time before walking out the house.
See,
I found that the easiest.
I still have some resistance to that because I'm like, my day, I feel like my day is so scheduled and I'm like,
Mm.
I want my mornings to be I want to have flexibility. The idea of adding a schedule and expectations to myself in the morning gives me some anxiety, but I'll figure that out. But yeah,
That makes sense.
it's good to hear that. And yeah, yeah. One thing I also discovered last year that helps me like work through thoughts and mind dumps is there is an app that you can only download, I think, if you're in the States, called Meno, Meno. It's more of, I believe it's more of a therapy app, but I also think I've done a lot of brain dumps with that. So
Oh, cool.
yeah.
Awesome. I'll check it out.
Yeah.
And just to change subject quickly before we end,
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like when hiring or in general and with like AI changing sort of the business landscape, what would you say is a really high value skill right now?
Being human. I say that, I think I post about it a lot on LinkedIn, is like the skill of being human, of listening, being empathetic, not being reactive. These are all still things that I still aspire to and I'm working on. Yeah, being human. And then being curious. And then being able to be organized, like these tools and everything that we talk about. Like, can you both manifest and then bring in the tools to your life to then support that?
Yeah. Yeah, true. I'm actually like playing around with a lot of these AI tools to create customized tools. I mean, there's tools like Replit and Bolt and things like that where you can prompt a tool specifically for you into existence, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah. Interesting times, right?
Yeah. And before I end every conversation, I ask my guests if they have a question for me.
Oh, well, one, I'm just impressed by everything that you've shared with me. So what are 3 things you've manifested for yourself in 2025?
Um,
Or just pick one. If 3 was too big.
no, I think so. My life has sort of changed quite a lot over the last, I'd say, 4 years. I was living in Hong Kong teaching English, but I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I've sort of changed careers, and I'm now at a stage where I'm about to start working for myself, which was something I always wanted to do, but it's kind of been a process of developing those skills. And I'd say it's been a constant process of sort of manifesting that into existence. And there are times where I feel like I haven't taken action as fast as I should have been. Um, but I feel like, yeah, I've made decisions and taken steps where I'm now pushing myself to make those decisions faster, take action faster, and it's kind of a sink or swim situation. And I don't really feel like there's a bit of anxiety about it, but I feel like I'm ready for it, and I need to. I know I'm going to swim. Yeah. So that's where I'm at the moment in terms of manifesting and making things happen.
Nice. I saw something. I'm trying to like not do the scroll thing. One of the things I've set myself is not scroll. Like there was a New York Times article like nice habits to practice, and it's like don't scroll. So I'm trying not to scroll, but I was scrolling last night, and I came across something that said, as you want to achieve certain goals, it's not necessarily comfortable, and that's what enables you to achieve them.
Yes.
I kind of like that. I think that was the theory behind it. So like, as you go after this goal and it's uncomfortable, I don't, I wish I had someone to tell me to say that the fact that it's uncomfortable or hard or stressful or anxiety inducing doesn't mean that it's wrong. They're not
Yeah,
signals that it's wrong. They're potentially signals that you're learning something new on this new path.
I agree. That's kind of the idea behind this podcast.
Mm.
It's for people to hear messages exactly like that from people who have gone out there and done it, because I think a lot of people have these big ideas and goals, and the first sight or feeling of that discomfort, they retreat back into their shells and feel that like maybe they shouldn't do it. And then there's fear and they start making excuses and things like that. And so, yeah, I'm at the point now where I'm embracing that sort of discomfort.
Good. What's the
Uh,
best that can happen? You'll learn something.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining me today, Libby. I really enjoyed our conversation. If people want to find out more about you in action, where can they do so?
LinkedIn is good. I think this might be on LinkedIn. So finding me on LinkedIn, finding Axioned on LinkedIn, and then you can get in contact with me through there. Yeah.
Great.
Thanks,
Thanks, Libby.
Byron. Cheers.
Thanks for listening. I really appreciate you making it all the way to the end. I hope you enjoyed the episode. One more quick reminder before you go. I have a weekly newsletter by the same name, Another Excuse, where I cover 4 topics: something that has changed my perception, a tool that could be useful to you, content that is actually worth consuming, and a concept that I try break down and explain. If this sounds of any interest to you and you need a kick up the arse, then you can subscribe at the link below. Thanks for joining me again, and I'll see you next week.